I've been saving money for 30 years for a rainy day, hiding it from my spendthrift husband. He thought I was a foolish housewife with no ambitions. When the doctors told me I had 6 months to live, I finally did what I'd always dreamed of. My husband found out when... I'm glad you're here with me. Please listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. For 30 years, I had been invisible in my own home. Not literally, of course. Richard saw me every day. He saw the woman who cooked his meals, ironed his shirts, hosted his colleagues' wives for bland dinner parties. But he never truly saw me. Margaret Chen Williams, the quiet Asian woman he'd married fresh out of college, the one who'd given up her dreams of opening a bookstore to raise his children and maintain his comfortable suburban life. Maggie, where's my blue tie? Richard's voice boomed from upstairs every morning like clockwork. Maggie, did you remember to pick up my dry cleaning? Maggie, Tom's wife said the roast was dry last night. I answered. I always answered. And while I did, my hand would sometimes drift to the loose brick behind the basement washing machine, where I kept my bank statements. $500 here, $200 there. Money skimmed from grocery budgets, birthday checks from my late mother that Richard never asked about, cash back from pharmacy purchases. 30 years of invisible accumulation. $312,000. Richard thought I was stupid. He told his brother once when he didn't know I was in the next room, Maggie's sweet, but let's be honest, Bob. She's not exactly ambitious. No head for money. It's better I handle everything. They'd laugh together over their scotch. What would he say if he knew his stupid wife had been smarter than him for 3 decades? Our house in Naperville was pristine. 4 bedrooms, manicured lawn, the kitchen Richard demanded I renovate 5 years ago because everyone at the firm has granite countertops now. We had 2 children, David and Sophie, both grown and living on the coasts, too busy with their own lives to call more than once a month. I didn't blame them. Richard had raised them to value success above all else, and I suppose I hadn't seemed very successful, folding laundry and arranging flowers. But something had begun to shift in recent months. Small things at first. Richard started coming home later. Big case, he'd say, loosening his tie. But there was a smell sometimes. Perfume that wasn't mine, floral and young. His phone, which used to sit on the kitchen counter, now went everywhere with him, even to the bathroom. And twice I'd seen charges on our credit card statement, the one he let me use for household expenses, that he'd circled in red pen with a question mark, as if accusing me of frivolous spending I hadn't done. "Did you go to some restaurant called Chez Louis?" he'd asked one evening, his voice tight. "No," I'd said simply. "The charge was for $300. I never spent that much on anything." He'd grunted and walked away, but I saw how his jaw clenched. Then came the doctor's appointment. Routine checkup, I'd thought. Dr. Morrison had been my physician for 15 years, a kind woman with graying hair and steady hands. She'd ordered some additional tests after my physical, just to be thorough, and I'd thought nothing of it, until she called me back to her office alone. "Margaret, I need you to sit down." Her voice had that particular gentleness that doctors use when they're about to break you. The imaging showed lesions on your liver. We did a biopsy, and I'm so sorry, but it's cancer. Stage 4. It's already metastasized to your lymph nodes and lungs. The room had tilted. What does that mean? With treatment, we might extend your time, but... She'd paused, and I'd seen tears in her eyes. 6 months. Maybe 9 if we're fortunate. I'm so very sorry. 6 months. I was 62 years old, and I had 6 months to live. That night, I'd cooked Richard's favorite meal, pot roast with roasted vegetables and homemade rolls. I'd set the table with our good china, and when he came home, smelling of that same floral perfume, distracted by his phone, barely looking at me, something inside me cracked open. "How was your day?" I'd asked, placing the platter in front of him. "Fine," he'd muttered, not looking up. I'd gone to bed early, and for the first time in 3 decades, I'd allowed myself to think about the money, not as a safety net, not as emergency funds for some distant catastrophe, but as mine. The next morning, while Richard was in the shower, I'd checked the brick behind the washing machine one more time, pulling out the statements I'd hidden in a waterproof envelope. $312,418. My secret life, measured in numbers. When the doctors told me I had 6 months to live, I'd finally done what I'd dreamed of for 30 years. And Richard found out when the divorce papers arrived the same day I signed the lease on the bookstore. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how it really unfolded. The morning after Dr. Morrison's diagnosis, I woke up at 5:47 a.m., 3 minutes before my alarm. Richard was snoring beside me, one arm flung across my pillow as if even in sleep he was claiming territory. I stared at the ceiling and did the math. 6 months, approximately 180 days, 4,320 hours. How many of those hours did I want to spend like this? I slipped out of bed and went downstairs, my bathrobe wrapped tight against the November chill. In the kitchen, I made coffee, the good kind I kept hidden in the back of the pantry, not the bulk Colombian blend Richard insisted on. I sat at the table and made a list. What I've lost, my dream of owning a bookstore postponed 38 years, my own identity, married at 24, I'm 62 now. Respect from my husband, did I ever have it? Time with my children, they learned from Richard to dismiss me. My health, 6 months left. My hand trembled as I wrote that last line. 6 months. The oncologist's words kept echoing. We could try aggressive chemotherapy, but given the advancement, it would mostly buy you pain, not time. I'd asked her, my voice barely a whisper, if I don't do treatment, will I suffer? For a while, you'll feel relatively normal. Fatigue will increase. Pain will come, but we can manage it. The last month will be hardest. 5 good months then? Maybe 5.5. What I have left? $312,418. Mine, earned through sacrifice and invisibility. 5 months of relative health. Nothing left to lose. That last point hit me like a physical blow. I had cancer. I was dying. What could Richard do to me now? Yell? Belittle me? I'd survived 30 years of that. What was 5 more months? The fear was still there, coiled in my stomach like a snake. But alongside it, something else was growing, something that felt almost like freedom. I heard the shower start upstairs. Richard would be down in 20 minutes expecting breakfast. Eggs over easy, wheat toast, orange juice. The same breakfast he'd eaten for 30 years. Instead, I took my coffee to the basement. The brick behind the washing machine came loose easily. I'd removed it so many times. I pulled out the waterproof envelope and spread the bank statements across the top of the dryer. 30 years of deposits, all in an account Richard didn't know existed. An account at a different bank under my maiden name. Chen. Margaret Chen. I'd been so careful. Always cash deposits, never more than $500 at a time. I told the bank manager I was saving for a surprise for my husband. She'd thought it was sweet. She'd helped me set up online statements only, no mail to the house. Now I looked at the numbers with different eyes. This wasn't just money, this was time. Not time left to live. That was beyond my control, but time lived fully. I grabbed a notebook and started calculating. Commercial real estate in downtown Naperville, $4,000, $6,000 per month for a small storefront. I'd need inventory, $50,000 to start. Shelving, furniture, a register system, $15,000. business license, insurance, legal fees, $10,000, 6 months of operating costs, assuming no profit, another $30,000. Total, approximately $120,000. I'd have nearly $200,000 left. Enough for medical care if I change my mind about treatment. Enough to leave something for David and Sophie, though God knew Richard would fight me for it if he found out. "Maggie!" Richard's voice boomed from upstairs. "Where's my breakfast?" I looked at the statements one more time, then carefully folded them back into the envelope. My hands weren't shaking anymore. "Coming!" I called back, but my voice sounded different even to my own ears. Stronger. I went upstairs and cracked 4 eggs into the pan. While they cooked, I watched Richard read the newspaper, his reading glasses perched on his nose, oblivious. He didn't even look up when I placed his plate in front of him. "I have some errands today," I said casually. "I'll be out most of the afternoon." "Fine. Pick up my prescription while you're out." He turned the page of his paper. "And we're having the Hendersons over tomorrow night, so make that salmon thing they liked." "Of course," I said. But I was already planning something else entirely. At 9:15 a.m., I walked into First Chicago Bank and asked to speak with someone about business accounts. At 10:30, I had an appointment with a commercial real estate agent. At 1 p.m., I was standing in front of a vacant storefront on Main Street, looking through the dusty windows at the empty space inside. It was perfect. High ceilings, exposed brick, large windows letting in streams of sunlight. I could see it already. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a cozy reading corner with armchairs, the smell of coffee and old paper. "The owner is motivated," the agent said. "Previous tenant left suddenly. He'd do a 6-month lease if you need something short-term." 6 months. The universe had a sense of irony. "I'll take it," I said. And just like that, my plan began. The lease signing was scheduled for Friday morning. I told Richard I had a dentist appointment. "Another one?" He looked up from his laptop, irritated. "You just went last month." "Cleaning," I'd said smoothly. "Dr. Patterson likes to see me every 6 weeks now that I'm older. Gum health." He'd waved his hand dismissively and returned to his screen. The lie had come so easily. Maybe I'd been practicing for 30 years without realizing it. The real estate office was in a modern building near the train station. Sandra Chen, no relation, though we joked about it, was a brisk woman in her 40s with a handshake that could crack walnuts. She laid out the papers with efficient precision. 6-month lease, first and last month up front, that's $12,000. Security deposit is another $6,000. Sign here, here, and here. My hand hesitated over the first signature line. This was real. This was money Richard didn't know about, being spent on a dream he'd mocked countless times. "You want to sell books?" He'd laughed 20 years ago when I'd first mentioned it. "Maggie, honey, bookstores are dying. Amazon exists. Why don't you take up gardening or something?" I'd never mentioned it again, but I'd never stopped wanting it. I signed, Margaret Chen Williams. The hyphen suddenly felt like a chain. "Congratulations," Sandra beamed. "When are you planning to open?" "Soon," I said, "very soon." I spent the afternoon at the storefront measuring spaces, taking photos, imagining where everything would go. The silence was beautiful. No one calling my name, no one needing something. Just me and the dusty sunlight and the ghost of the future I was building. I got home at 4:30, enough time to start dinner before Richard returned. But his car was already in the driveway, unusual for a Friday afternoon. He typically went out with colleagues for drinks. I found him in his study, on the phone. His voice was low, intimate. "I know, sweetheart, tomorrow night. He'll be at his brother's poker game. No, she won't suspect anything. Trust me, Maggie doesn't pay attention to anything beyond her grocery lists." I stood frozen in the doorway. He hadn't seen me. His back was to the door, and he was laughing softly at something the person on the other end said. "Cynthia, you worry too much. We've been careful for 2 years now. She's clueless." 2 years. The words hit me like ice water. 2 years of deception, and I'd been right here, cooking and cleaning and being clueless. I backed away silently, my heart pounding. In the kitchen, I gripped the counter and forced myself to breathe. 2 years. That floral perfume, the late nights, the mysterious credit card charges. Cynthia. The name rang a bell. Richard's paralegal? No, his associate. Cynthia Brennan. 20 years younger than me, blonde, ambitious. She'd come to one of our dinner parties last year. I'd served her my pot roast, and she'd smiled at me with perfect white teeth and said, "Richard always talks about what an amazing cook you are, Mrs. Williams." While fucking my husband, the rage was sudden and consuming. But beneath it was something else, vindication. Because now I knew, now I had a reason that even David and Sophie couldn't argue with. Now I needed proof. That evening, I played the dutiful wife. Made Richard's favorite dinner, smiled when he complained about the partners at his firm, didn't mention where I'd really been. He kissed my forehead absently before going to bed, scrolling through his phone. I waited until his snores filled the bedroom. Then I slipped downstairs to his study. His laptop was password protected, but his filing cabinet wasn't. Richard had never imagined I'd go through his things. Why would he? I was sweet, harmless Maggie. It took me an hour to find them, tucked in a folder labeled 2024 tax documents, a place he knew I'd never look because he handled all our finances. Hotel receipts, dozens of them. The Langham, downtown Chicago. The same room number, 1847. Charged to his personal credit card, the one I didn't have access to. And restaurant receipts. Chez Louis, the charge he'd accused me of making. Dozens more. Expensive bottles of wine, desserts for two. I photographed everything with my phone, my hand steady now. Then I found something else. A jewelry receipt from Tiffany & Co., a diamond tennis bracelet, $8,000. Purchased 3 weeks ago. I'd never owned anything from Tiffany's. For our 30th anniversary, Richard had given me a KitchenAid mixer. I put everything back exactly as I'd found it and went to the kitchen. Poured myself a glass of the good wine Richard kept locked in his special cabinet. I'd known where he hid the key for years. Sat at the table in the dark. 2 years with Cynthia. Probably longer if I was honest. How many other women before her? How many times had he come home from working late and climbed into bed beside me, reeking of someone else? My phone buzzed. An email from Sandra. "Keys ready Monday morning. So excited for your new venture." I looked around the kitchen. The kitchen I'd cleaned for 30 years. The table where I'd eaten thousands of silent dinners, while Richard read his phone. The refrigerator covered in old photos of David and Sophie, back when they were young enough to still hug me goodbye. This wasn't my home, it was my prison. And I was dying anyway. What exactly did I have to lose? Monday morning, I'd pick up the keys to my bookstore, and soon after that, Richard was going to learn that his clueless wife was much smarter than he'd ever imagined. Monday morning, I picked up the keys at 9 a.m. The metal felt heavy in my palm, weighted with possibility. By noon, I'd hired a contractor to repaint the walls, cream with forest green accents. By 3 p.m., I'd ordered shelving online, expedited shipping. By 5 p.m., I'd transferred $80,000 from my secret account to the business account I'd opened. Each transaction felt like shedding skin. Richard didn't notice. He came home late Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. "Big case," he kept saying. I nodded and served dinner and said nothing about the floral perfume that clung to his collar. Thursday afternoon, I was at the storefront supervising the painting when my phone rang. Richard. Unusual. He never called during the day. "Maggie, what the hell is this?" My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I just got a call from Jerry Matheson. You know, Bob's friend from the Rotary Club. He says his wife saw you signing papers at some real estate office last week. She says you're leasing a commercial space. What the fuck is going on?" I should have known. Naperville was too small, too gossipy. Of course someone would see me. Of course word would get back to Richard's circle. It's none of your concern, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. None of my concern? Maggie, have you lost your mind? What are you doing? Opening a bookstore. Silence. Then, with what money? My money. Your money? Maggie, you don't have any money. I handle our finances. What are you talking about? The painter glanced over at me, concerned. I stepped outside onto Main Street. I have my own savings, Richard. I've had them for a very long time. Savings? From what? Your grocery budget? He laughed, but it sounded forced. This is ridiculous. I'm coming down there. Where are you? No, I said firmly. You're not. Maggie! I hung up. My hands were shaking. I sat down on the bench outside the storefront and tried to breathe. He knew. Not everything, but enough to be alarmed. And Richard didn't like being surprised. Richard liked control. He showed up anyway 20 minutes later. I watched his Mercedes pull into a parking spot across the street. He got out, his face red, his tie loosened. And he wasn't alone. Cynthia Brennan stepped out of the passenger side. She was wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She touched Richard's arm as they crossed the street, and the intimacy of the gesture told me everything I needed to know. Maggie. Richard's voice was tight as they approached. What is this? This is my bookstore, I said calmly, though my heart was racing. Richard, we're in public. Perhaps we should... I don't give a damn about public. He gestured wildly at the storefront behind me. You spent money, our money on this, without discussing it with me? It's not our money, I said. It's mine. Cynthia stepped forward, her smile sharp. Mrs. Williams, I think you might be confused. In Illinois, marital assets are... I know exactly what marital assets are, Ms. Brennan. I looked directly at her. And I know what other things you share with my husband. Her smile faltered. Richard's face went white. What are you talking about? He blustered. Cynthia is my associate. She drove me here because you've been fucking her for 2 years. I said it quietly, but the words hung in the air like a bomb. A woman walking past with a stroller actually stopped and stared. You're being hysterical, Richard hissed. This is exactly why I handle the finances. You're clearly not thinking straight. Have you been taking something? Are you ill? The irony almost made me laugh. No, Richard, I'm not ill. I'm just done. Done with what? With you, with this marriage, with being invisible. Cynthia's expression had shifted from shocked to calculating. Richard, maybe we should go. Let her calm down. I'm perfectly calm, I said, but I think you should both leave, now. Richard stepped closer, lowering his voice. Maggie, close this thing down. Come home. We'll talk about this rationally. There's nothing to discuss. I'm your husband. I'm not letting you throw away our money on some midlife crisis. It's not a midlife crisis when you're dying. The words came out before I could stop them. Richard froze. Cynthia's mouth fell open. What? Richard's voice was barely a whisper. I have cancer, I said. Stage 4, 6 months to live, and I'm spending my last months doing exactly what I want. I turned and walked back into my store, leaving them standing on the sidewalk. Through the window, I watched them argue. Cynthia pulling at Richard's arm, Richard shaking his head, both of them looking back at the storefront with expressions I couldn't quite read. Finally, they left. The painter appeared beside me. You okay, ma'am? Yes, I said, and surprisingly, I was. Let's get back to work. That evening, Richard didn't come home. His brother Bob called at 9 p.m., his voice uncomfortable. Maggie, Richard's staying at my place tonight. He says you two had a disagreement. That's one word for it, I said. He's pretty upset. Says you're sick? Is that true? Yes, Bob, it's true. A long pause. Jesus, Maggie, I'm sorry. Do you need anything? The kindness in his voice almost broke me. No, thank you for asking. I hung up and poured myself a glass of wine. The house was silent, peaceful. For the first time in 30 years, I was alone, and I wasn't afraid. Richard stayed away for 3 days. 3 blessed, quiet days where I worked on the bookstore from morning until evening, transforming the empty space into something beautiful. The shelves arrived and were assembled. I'd hired 2 college students to help, and together we painted, organized, cleaned. On the 4th day, he came back. I was having coffee at the kitchen table, reviewing wholesale catalogs for book orders, when I heard his key in the lock. It was 7 a.m. He looked terrible. Unshaven, rumpled, his eyes bloodshot. Maggie. He sat down across from me without asking. We need to talk. Good morning, Richard. He ran his hands through his hair. I've been thinking about what you said, about the cancer. Have you? I want you to see another doctor, get a second opinion. Sometimes these things are misdiagnosed. I've seen 3 doctors, Richard. It's not a misdiagnosis. His jaw worked. Then we'll fight it. We'll get the best oncologists. Money is no object. I don't want treatment. That's insane. You can't just give up. I'm not giving up. I'm choosing how I spend my time. I turned a page in my catalog. I'm opening my bookstore, and then I'm going to run it for as long as I can. That's my decision. He leaned forward, and his voice softened. The voice he used when he wanted something. Sweetheart, I know I've been distracted lately, working too much, not paying enough attention, but this, he gestured around the kitchen, this is our home, our life together. Don't throw it away because you're angry with me. I'm not angry, Richard. I'm just done. You're not thinking clearly. The diagnosis, it's obviously affected your judgment. My judgment is perfectly clear. Then let's talk about this rationally. His tone shifted, became more controlled. This bookstore idea, it's sweet, really, but it's not practical. You have no business experience. You'll lose everything. Not everything, just my money. Our money. Maggie, in a marriage, assets are shared. The money I'm using isn't a marital asset. It's in an account you don't know about, under my maiden name. I've been saving it for 30 years. I watched the realization hit him. His face went from confusion to shock to something darker. You've been hiding money from me for 30 years? Yes. That's fraud. That's financial infidelity. Like sleeping with your paralegal for 2 years? He stood up abruptly, the chair scraping loudly. I don't know what you think you know. Room 1847 at the Langham, Chez Louis restaurant. A diamond tennis bracelet from Tiffany's that I've certainly never seen. I looked up at him calmly. Should I continue? His face had gone pale. You went through my files. I did. Maggie. His voice changed again, became almost pleading. Okay, yes, Cynthia and I... It was a mistake, a terrible mistake, but it's over now. I ended it, I swear. You're lying. I'm not... Richard, I don't care if you're lying. That's the point. I don't care about you and Cynthia anymore. I care about my bookstore and my last few months of life. That's it. He stared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Maybe the Maggie he knew had never really existed. What do you want? He finally asked. Money? A bigger settlement when we divorce? Is that what this is about? I want you to leave me alone, I said. I want to open my store and spend my remaining time in peace. That's all. You're being unreasonable. Please leave, Richard. He left, but I knew it wasn't over. That afternoon, my daughter Sophie called. She was crying before I even said hello. Mom, Dad says you're dying. He says you have cancer and you won't get treatment and you're throwing away money on some crazy business scheme. What's going on? I closed my eyes. Of course he'd called the children. Sophie, honey, is it true? Are you dying? Yes. Her sob broke my heart. Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you call? I was going to. I just needed some time to... Time? Mom, you don't have time. Dad says it's stage 4. He says you have months. How could you not tell us? I'm telling you now. And this bookstore thing, Dad says you're being irrational, that the diagnosis has made you... Sophie. My voice was firm. Your father is lying to you. Not about the cancer, that's true, but about everything else. I'm not irrational. I'm not having a breakdown. I'm finally doing something I've wanted to do my entire life. By leaving Dad? Mom, he's devastated. He loves you. He's having an affair with a woman from his office. He has been for 2 years. Silence, then what? Her name is Cynthia Brennan. I have receipts, photos, evidence. Your father doesn't love me, Sophie. He probably never did. He loved having a convenient wife who made his life comfortable. I can't... Sophie was crying harder now. This is too much. I need to think. I'll call you back. She hung up. I sat in the silence of my kitchen and felt utterly alone. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mrs. Williams, this is Claire Mendoza. I own the coffee shop 2 doors down from your new store. Saw you working there yesterday. Would love to meet and welcome you to Main Street. Coffee tomorrow morning? I stared at the message. A stranger, offering kindness. I typed back, yes, thank you. 9 a.m.? Her response was immediate. Perfect, looking forward to it. I put the phone down and realized I was smiling. For the first time in days, I was smiling. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. Claire Mendoza was a revelation. Short, round, with wild curly hair and an infectious laugh, she owned Mendoza's Coffee House, a cozy spot that smelled of cinnamon and fresh bread. We met that Saturday morning, and within 10 minutes, I'd told her everything. Not because I meant to, but she had that kind of face. Open, understanding, genuinely interested. So your husband's a cheating bastard, you're dying, and you're opening a bookstore. She stirred her latte thoughtfully. I like you already. I laughed, surprised at myself. I'm not usually this forthcoming with strangers. Honey, we're not strangers. We're future business neighbors. That's basically family. She leaned forward. And between you and me, the bookstore thing? It's perfect. This street needs something like that, something with soul. Half these shops are boutiques selling $40 candles. You think people will actually come? Are you kidding? This town is full of rich suburban moms with book clubs and too much time. You'll be packed. She paused. When are you opening? 2 weeks, December 1st. Then you need help. My daughter's home from college for Thanksgiving. She'll work for you, help you get organized. She's a lit major, loves this stuff. Claire, I can't ask you to... You're not asking. I'm offering. She squeezed my hand across the table. Nobody should do this alone, Margaret, especially not now. I felt tears prick my eyes. Thank you. Over the next week, Claire was true to her word. Her daughter, Rosa, a bright-eyed 20-year-old with purple streaks in her hair, showed up every morning to help unpack boxes of books, organize the inventory system, set up the register. Claire brought coffee and pastries daily, refusing payment. Consider it an investment in my future favorite neighbor, she'd say. The store was taking shape. Beautiful. Exactly what I'd always envisioned. The walls were lined with shelves, organized by genre. I'd set up a reading corner with 2 armchairs I'd found at a consignment shop. String lights hung from the ceiling, giving the space a warm glow. A small table by the window was designated for coffee and tea service. Claire had insisted. Every good bookstore has drinks, she'd said. Partner with me. I'll supply the coffee, you sell it. We'll split the profits. I was happy, genuinely, deeply happy, for the first time in decades. Then Richard came back. It was Wednesday evening, 5 days before the opening. I was at the store late arranging the window display when I heard the door chime. I turned, expecting Rosa, but it was Richard, with Cynthia beside him. My body went cold. Maggie! Richard's voice was gentle, controlled. We need to talk. Really talk. I don't think there's anything to discuss. Please, just hear me out. He gestured to Cynthia. We both want to apologize. We've been thinking a lot about everything, and we've been unfair to you. Cynthia stepped forward, her expression earnest. Mrs. Williams, I owe you an apology. What happened between Richard and me was wrong. I should never have... Stop. I held up my hand. I don't need your apology, Ms. Brennan. What I need is for both of you to leave my store. Maggie, please. Richard moved closer. I know you're angry. You have every right to be, but this... He gestured around the bookstore. This isn't healthy. You're sick. You should be focusing on treatment, on spending time with family. I'm spending my time exactly how I want. But you're not thinking about David and Sophie. They're worried sick. David's flying in this weekend because he's so concerned. You called David. My voice rose. Richard, you had no right. I had every right. I'm their father, and their mother is dying and behaving irrationally. I'm not irrational. Cynthia touched Richard's arm, a gesture clearly meant to calm him. Then she turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mrs. Williams, we're just trying to help. Richard told me about the money you've been hiding. It's not hidden, it's mine. And we're worried you're being taken advantage of. Opening a business is complicated. Have you consulted a lawyer, an accountant? Do you understand the tax implications? I understand perfectly well. Richard's mask slipped slightly. Maggie, be reasonable. You're dying. This store is going to fail, and then what? You'll have wasted your savings. Savings that should go to David and Sophie on a vanity project. Get out. And for what? So you can play shopkeeper for a few months before... Get out! I was shaking now. Both of you, get out of my store right now. Richard's face hardened. The gentle facade dropped completely. You're making a huge mistake. You think you can just walk away from our marriage, humiliate me in front of the entire town, waste marital assets. They're not marital assets. A judge might disagree, especially when I explain to him how mentally unstable you've become since your diagnosis. Competency hearings exist for a reason, Maggie. The threat hung in the air like poison, Cynthia added, her voice soft. We're just looking out for you, Mrs. Williams, and for your children's inheritance. Richard has been very patient, but there are legal options. Are you threatening me? We're trying to help you see reason, Richard said. Close this store. Come home. Let me take care of you properly for whatever time you have left. That's all we want. I looked at them both. This man I'd spent 30 years with, and this woman he'd chosen to replace me, and saw them clearly for the first time. They weren't here to reconcile. They weren't here to apologize. They were here because I disrupted Richard's carefully controlled life, and he wanted to regain control. No, I said quietly. I'm not closing the store. I'm not coming home. And if you try to declare me incompetent, I'll make sure every judge in this county sees the evidence of your affair. The hotel receipts, the jewelry, all of it. Richard's face turned purple. You vindictive bitch! Leave now, or I'll call the police. They left, finally, but not before Richard turned at the door and said, This isn't over, Maggie. Not by a long shot. After they were gone, I sat in one of the armchairs and shook. My phone buzzed, a text from Claire. Saw them go in, you okay? I typed back, yes, scared, but okay. Her response, good. Fear means you're still fighting. Come to my shop, I'm making hot chocolate. I went. And over hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. Claire listened while I told her everything. He threatened to have you declared incompetent? She asked, furious. Yes. Can he do that? I don't know, maybe. If he can convince a judge I'm not mentally sound. I shook my head. I need a lawyer. My cousin's a family law attorney. I'll call her tonight. Claire grabbed my hand. Margaret, listen to me. You're not alone in this. You understand? Whatever he tries, we'll fight it. I nodded, feeling the fear transform into something else, something harder, more determined. Richard wanted a fight? Fine, he'd have one. The store opened on December 1st. Claire helped me organize a small reception, wine, cheese, cookies from her shop. I'd sent invitations to everyone I could think of, neighbors, old friends from the book club I'd belonged to years ago, people I'd met through the children's schools. I didn't invite Richard, but he came anyway, with David and Sophie. I saw them through the window as I was greeting customers. My children, whom I hadn't seen in person for over a year, standing on either side of their father like reinforcements. David looked tired and worried. Sophie had been crying. Richard looked triumphant. They entered together, and the cheerful buzz of conversation faltered as people sensed tension. Mom! Sophie's voice cracked. She crossed the room and hugged me tightly. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know about any of this until Dad called. It's okay, honey. It's not okay. David stepped forward. Mom, what the hell is going on? Dad says you're refusing treatment, that you've lost it, that you're throwing away money. Can we discuss this somewhere private? I gestured toward the back room. No. Richard's voice cut through the murmuring crowd. I think we should discuss this right here, since you've chosen to make our private life so very public. The room went completely silent. 30-some people stared at us. Richard, please. Please what, Maggie? Please continue to let you deceive our children. Please stand by while you destroy yourself? He turned to the gathered crowd, his lawyer voice in full effect. My wife has been diagnosed with terminal cancer. Instead of seeking treatment, she's chosen to spend her final months and our money on this. He gestured dismissively around the store. This fantasy. Richard, stop, Sophie started. She's been hiding money from me for 30 years, over $300,000. Money that should have gone toward our children's education, our retirement, our family's future. Instead, she hoarded it like what, Richard? My voice was calm, cold, like a safety net from a man who's been stealing from his own clients. The room collectively gasped. Richard's face went white. What are you talking about? David asked. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos I'd taken. 3 days ago, I hired a private investigator. Not for the affair, I already had proof of that. But I wanted to know why Richard was so interested in my money suddenly. Why the urgency? I projected the images onto the white wall using a small portable projector I'd set up for book readings. Bank statements, transaction records, documents with Richard's signature. Your father has been embezzling from his firm's client trust accounts for 18 months. Small amounts at first. $5,000 here, $10,000 there. But it's added up to over $200,000. The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. Richard's face had gone from white to red. That's insane. That's a complete fabrication. Is it? I advanced on him, and for the first time in our marriage, I saw fear in his eyes. Because I have copies of everything. Account transfers, falsified documents, even emails between you and Cynthia discussing how to hide the trail. Cynthia. I saw her in the crowd then, standing near the back, her face frozen in panic. That's right, I said louder. Cynthia Brennan, Richard's associate and mistress, has been helping him cook the books. She's the one who processes the trust accounts. She's the one who's been covering for him. Cynthia pushed toward the door, but Claire's daughter Rosa stepped in front of it, arms crossed. Going somewhere? Rosa asked. You can't prove any of this, Richard blustered. This is slander. I'll sue you for what? Telling the truth? I turned to David and Sophie. Your father found out I had money and he panicked because he needs it. He needs it to cover what he's stolen before the firm's annual audit at the end of December. That's why he's been so desperate to get his hands on my savings." "Mom, is this true?" David asked, his voice hollow. "Every word. I have documentation. So does my lawyer. So does the Illinois State Bar Association as of this morning." Richard lunged toward me, and for a moment, I thought he might actually hit me. But Bob, Richard's brother, who'd been standing quietly in the corner, stepped between us. "Rich, that's enough." Bob's voice was hard. "If this is true—" "It's not true. She's a bitter, dying woman trying to ruin me." "Then prove it," I said. "Let's all go to the police right now. Show them your books, your accounts. Let's see who's telling the truth." Richard's face crumbled, just collapsed. And in that moment, everyone in the room knew. They knew I was telling the truth. Sophie was sobbing. David looked shell-shocked. The crowd of customers and neighbors stared at Richard with disgust and fascination. Cynthia broke for the door, shoving past Rosa. Richard followed her, desperate. "This isn't over," he shouted back at me. "You think you've won, but you haven't. You'll what, Richard?" I stood in my bookstore, surrounded by the evidence of my dream made real, and I felt nothing but cold, clean power. "You'll destroy me. I'm already dying. You'll take my money. It's mine, and I've spent it. You'll turn my children against me." I looked at David and Sophie, both crying, both staring at their father with betrayed, broken expressions. "I think you've done that yourself," I said quietly. Richard fled. The door slammed behind him and Cynthia. The room was silent. Then Claire started clapping, slowly at first, then faster. Rosa joined her, then Bob, then others, until the entire room was applauding, and I stood there. Margaret Chen Williams, 62 years old and dying, and felt more alive than I had in 30 years. The police came to the opening reception within an hour. Not for me, for Richard. My lawyer, Claire's cousin Marianne, had filed a formal complaint with both the police and the Illinois State Bar earlier that day, backed by the evidence my private investigator had compiled. Richard and Cynthia were arrested at the Langham Hotel, room 1847, their favorite spot. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. David and Sophie stayed with me that night. We sat in my newly opened bookstore after everyone else had left, surrounded by books and string lights, and I told them everything about the 30 years of saving, about being invisible, about the diagnosis, about finally choosing myself. Sophie cried. David was angry, not at me, but at himself. "I should have seen it," he kept saying. "I should have paid more attention. I should have called more, visited more." "You had your own lives," I said gently. "That's what children are supposed to do. But Dad always said you were happy, that you loved being home, taking care of things." "I did love taking care of you too. But your father?" I shook my head. "I stopped loving him years ago. I just didn't know how to leave." "Until now," Sophie said softly. "Until now." The legal proceedings moved quickly. Richard's firm launched an internal investigation and found exactly what we'd suspected: $247,000 missing from client trust accounts, carefully embezzled over 18 months. Cynthia, faced with evidence and the threat of disbarment plus prison time, gave a full confession and testified against Richard in exchange for a plea deal. Richard fought everything, denied the embezzlement despite the paper trail, claimed the affair was a brief indiscretion, tried to argue that my savings were marital assets he was entitled to. The judge, a stern woman named Patricia Hernandez, was unimpressed. "Mr. Williams," she'd said during one hearing, "you've stolen from your clients, committed adultery, and are now attempting to claim money your wife saved over 30 years without your knowledge. Do you have any sense of shame?" Richard's lawyer had objected, but the damage was done. The divorce was finalized in February. Richard got nothing. The prenup I'd insisted on 30 years ago, when my mother had whispered, "Protect yourself," at our wedding, meant he had no claim to my personal savings. The house went to me. He didn't fight it, too busy dealing with criminal charges. His pension from the firm was frozen pending restitution to the defrauded clients. Richard was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison for embezzlement and fraud. Cynthia got 18 months and was disbarred. Her carefully built career destroyed. But the sweetest victory came from somewhere unexpected. In March, 3 months after the opening, my bookstore had become the heart of Main Street. Claire and I had partnered for a coffee and book setup that drew crowds every weekend. We hosted book clubs, author readings, children's story hours. The local paper did a feature, "Local Woman Opens Dream Bookstore While Fighting Cancer." The community rallied. Customers came not just to buy books, but to support me, to be part of something real. And then, on a Tuesday afternoon in mid-March, a woman walked in. She was in her 60s, well-dressed, her face kind but curious. "Mrs. Williams, Margaret Chen Williams?" "Yes." "My name is Patricia Morrison. I'm a partner at Morrison, Klein and Associates. We're the law firm your husband stole from." She extended her hand. "I wanted to meet you personally." My stomach dropped. "I had nothing to do with what Richard did." "I know that." She smiled. "Actually, I'm here because our firm wants to make things right. Richard stole money that belonged to our clients, people who trusted us. We've recovered most of it from his frozen accounts, but there's a deficit. The partners have been discussing how to handle it." "I don't understand." "We know about your illness. We know about your bookstore. And we know you did what the authorities couldn't. You exposed Richard's crimes and saved our firm's reputation." She pulled out an envelope. "The partners voted unanimously. This is for you. Consider it gratitude." Inside the envelope was a check for $50,000. I stared at it, speechless. "We also wanted to ask permission to use this space for client events," Patricia continued. "Book readings, small gatherings. We'd pay rental fees, of course. And we'd like to establish a scholarship in your name at Northwestern for women returning to education or entrepreneurship later in life." I started crying. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes. Let some good come from Richard's terrible choices. Let your courage inspire others." I said yes. By April, I'd paid off all the store's startup costs and had money left over. The scholarship was established, the Margaret Chen Memorial Fund for Women's Second Chances. Patricia Morrison became a regular customer and a friend. David and Sophie visited every weekend. David had taken a leave from his job in Boston to spend time with me. Sophie had transferred to Northwestern to be closer. They helped in the store, made me laugh, reminded me why I'd endured 30 years of marriage in the first place, to give them life and to know them now. Richard sent letters from prison, angry at first, then pleading, then bitter. I never responded. There was nothing left to say to him. In May, the doctors marveled at how well I was doing. "The cancer's progressed," Dr. Morrison admitted, "but slower than expected. You might have a year, Margaret, maybe more." I was grateful for every single day. Summer came, and my bookstore bloomed, literally. Claire and I planted flower boxes under the windows, filled with lavender and daisies. The scent drifted into the store on warm days, mixing with coffee and old paper. Heaven, I thought. If this isn't heaven, it's close. June marked 6 months since my diagnosis. I should have been declining rapidly according to the original prognosis. Instead, I was tired but functional. The pain was manageable with medication. I'd lost weight, but not dramatically. Dr. Morrison called it remarkable. "Your mental state is helping," she'd explained. "Stress suppresses the immune system. Happiness, purpose, These things matter more than we understand. You're proof of that." I didn't feel like proof. I felt like a woman living fully for the first time. The store was thriving. We'd expanded the coffee selection, added pastries, hosted 3 author events that sold out. My book club, Second Chapter, I'd named it, for women over 50 starting new phases of life, met every Thursday evening. 23 regular members, including 2 divorce lawyers, a retired teacher, a widow, and a woman who'd just left a 30-year career to start painting. "You inspired me," she'd told me one evening. "If you could do it while dying, what excuse did I have?" David had decided to stay in Chicago. He'd found a job at a tech company downtown and was renting an apartment in Naperville. "I want to be close, Mom," he'd said. "I missed too many years." Sophie was thriving at Northwestern, majoring in English literature. She worked at the store 3 days a week, and we'd developed the relationship I'd always dreamed of, talking about books, life, her hopes and fears. She'd started dating a kind young man named James, who treated her with respect. "Not like Dad treated you," she'd said once, and I'd seen understanding in her eyes. Painful understanding, but important. Claire and I had become inseparable. She was the sister I'd never had, the friend I'd never allowed myself time to make. We took walks along the river, tried new restaurants, laughed until we cried over wine and shared stories. "You know what's funny?" Claire said one evening as we closed up our shops together. "6 months ago, I was the one who was lonely. My kids are all over the country. My husband died 5 years ago, and I wondered if this," she gestured at the coffee shop, "was all I had left. Then you showed up, and suddenly life got interesting again." "Interesting is one word for it," I said, smiling. "You gave me purpose back, Margaret. You reminded me that it's never too late to build something new." Rosa, Claire's daughter, had decided to defer graduate school to manage the bookstore. "If you'll have me," she'd said nervously. "I know this is your dream, but I love it here. And when you—" She'd trailed off, unable to say the words. "When I die," I'd said gently, "I'd be honored if you kept this place going. Nothing would make me happier." We'd formalized it with Marianne's help. Rosa would inherit the business, with a portion of profits going to David and Sophie. Everyone was satisfied. Everything was settled. Meanwhile, Richard's world had collapsed completely. I heard updates through Bob, who'd stayed in contact despite everything. Bob felt guilty. "I should have known what Rich was doing," he'd say. But I'd forgiven him. He wasn't responsible for his brother's choices. Richard had been disbarred permanently. His sentence was 6 years, but realistically, he'd served 4 with good behavior. He was at a minimum security federal prison downstate, working in the library. "He looks old," Bob had told me after visiting. "Broken. He keeps saying it's all your fault that you destroyed him." I didn't destroy him. I just stopped protecting him from himself. Cynthia's fate was perhaps more fitting. She'd served her 18 months and been released in May. Without her law license, without her career, she'd moved back to her parents' house in Indiana. I'd heard through the Naperville Gossip Network, which was remarkably efficient, that she was working as a receptionist at a dental office. Her engagement to the man she'd been dating before Richard, broken off when the affair came out, was never rekindled. She was alone, humiliated, her future destroyed. I didn't take pleasure in their suffering exactly, but I didn't feel guilty either. They'd made their choices. Consequences had followed. One evening in July, I was locking up the store when a woman approached me. Expensive suit, briefcase, the look of someone important. "Mrs. Williams, I'm Janet Chen. I'm with Chicago Magazine." She extended a business card. "We're doing a feature on women entrepreneurs over 60, and your story has been remarkable. Would you be interested in an interview?" The article came out in September. Full spread, professional photos of me in the store, surrounded by books. The headline read, "The Last Chapter: How one woman turned terminal illness into a new beginning. It went viral, not just locally, but nationally. I was interviewed on NPR. A publisher reached out about writing a book. Speaking invitations arrived from women's groups, business conferences, cancer support organizations. I said yes to the ones that felt right, no to the rest. Because my time was limited and I'd learned something important. You don't owe anyone your story, your time, or your energy. You get to choose. Every single day, you get to choose. And I chose joy. I chose books. I chose Claire's laughter and Rosa's enthusiasm and my children's presence. I chose morning coffee in my own store, watching sunrise light up the spines of 1,000 stories. I chose me. Finally, after 62 years, I chose me. And it was glorious. So that's my story. I'm still here, still running my bookstore, still making the most of whatever time I have left. The doctors say maybe another 6 months, maybe a year, maybe less. But here's what I've learned. Time isn't measured in years or months or days. It's measured in moments of courage, in choices that define who you really are. I spent 30 years being invisible, saving for a someday that almost never came. Then I got 6 months to live, and I finally chose myself. Here's my question for you. What are you waiting for? What dream are you postponing? What life are you not living because you're afraid, or because someone told you that you couldn't, or because it seems too late? It's not too late. Trust me, I'm living proof. If my story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Are you living the life you want or the life others expected? Have you ever had to choose yourself over someone else's expectations? Share your story. Maybe it will inspire someone else the way you've all inspired me. And if you want to hear more stories like mine, stories of courage, transformation, second chances, please subscribe to this channel. I'm not the only one with a story worth telling. We all have chapters we haven't written yet. Thank you for listening to mine. Thank you for being here. Thank you for reminding me that even at the end, we can still begin again. Now go write your own next chapter. Make it a good one. You deserve it.